trans women are in.
And
And
I will say this, I got complimented multiple times on my swimsuit selection by women, which is always great, women upholding women. And a
mhm,
few men commented as well, which is to be expected. You know, I'm kind of bodacious in the body. But I think what people see, especially when they look at me, I think they just see my comfortability. So they don't think anything out of the way. You know, I know there's a great portion of trans women who like to live the stealth life. I just live the
mhm,
life that I have. And I think when I present myself in public, you know, no makeup, no nothing, people look at me and they see auntie, grandmother, you know, mother. So I think
mhm.
people look at me and don't give me a second glance. Whereas I
Well,
think sometimes some of my other sisters, be them younger or older, I think they put so much effort into their meticulous makeup and meticulous hair, you know, that sometimes people look at them and think, wait a minute, they take that second look and then they start noticing things. Oh, that's a tall lady. Oh,
mhm.
it's got high, big breasts. They must be, you know, implanted. Her, this looks this, that looks that. And then they start to figure things out. Whereas I think
Mhm.
I'm more of a plain Jane, so I just kind of float through society.
That's what I like about being me, because when I'm not all done up, I like the fact that I can melt into society
Well,
and
I
just
like how
live.
you look today for sure. You look like someone's auntie today for sure. So,
Oh, well, look at this here. Oh, I tried to do it. She told me to try to keep it down, try not to do the drag thing, which I'm used to. I want the girls to understand that I've been around this for 36 years. So I
uh,
understand that you have to relate to the women that you are talking to. They
mm.
need to see somebody looking back at them that looks like them or resembles them or acts like them. That way they can be comfortable to do what they do,
And
to
I
be
think
who
that's
they
the
are.
important. And that's the importance of your doing interviews and shows like this, because oftentimes trans women were portrayed in the media one way. And I think that's why we often get approached in a sexual connotation because we're over sexualized in the media. You know, some
Mhm,
guys will say, you know, when you come over, you're going to be dressed. I'm like, dressed as what? I mean, it's not Halloween. What are you asking about? You know, they're like, "Were you going to be dressed as a woman?" I'm like, "Well, I live my life every day as one. So what?" And then I realized it's not a connection for me because they're looking for a fantasy version. They're looking for the porn version of a trans woman. They want the long
mhm,
painted nails, you know, the hair, the makeup, the tight costume, the corseted waist. And that's not what I'm giving. That's not who I am. You know, that's a
mhm,
fantasy that I can create on stage for you, but it doesn't follow
mhm,
me off.
mhm. Well, I like the fact that you're just so open and honest. That's why I love talking to you, because you just make sense. And it's something that a lot of trans women should learn how to live their life a lot like the way you do yours. And the
I
fact
think it
that
comes. I think it comes from. I'm sorry. I think it comes from an expectation. I think that some trans women think that people expect something from them versus just being who and what they are. You know, as a person of
Mhm,
color, you know, representing, you know, Black American women, you know, I know sometimes people turn heads when they see Black women in makeup because it's not customary to see Black women in a full beat. You know what I'm saying? You know,
mhm.
and when you present that, you might get some looks. But I don't think that we owe the world anything other than who we are honestly and at our core. So I'm always going to stay true to myself and be my plain ordinary self.
Mhm. I find it rather strange. I have a conversation coming up with a bunch of Black ladies in a few weeks here. And I said something in the interview about the fact that Black women have always not really like Black trans women. But today's society, they're trying to look like drag queens or trans women with the eyelashes, the BBLs, the outrageous clothes. And then they don't want men to call them drag queens. But now they're looking a lot like drag queens or trans women that would be performing.
And that's the truth. You know, I've had this conversation with multiple girlfriends. There was a time that we wanted to emulate looking like, you know, our beautiful sisters. and now it's like they're wanting more to look like us. I think because of the way that some trans women are exalted and put in a certain pedestal, that it's the look is what's desired. They want to have the look, but they don't want to have the life. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I've seen women be insulted that someone thought they were trans, and I've seen women feel, like, I don't know the word I'm looking for, but they would feel like, "Oh my God, you thought I was trans? I look that pretty that you thought I could be a trans woman?" So it comes in
Mhm.
in both hands. I think there's always going to be a disconnect. Well, not always, but I think there's often a disconnect because people don't know how to express themselves. And when I've had the opportunity to speak with Black women, um, I often said, no one's trying to, because I think people think that we're trying to compete with women for mates, spouses, whatever. And
Mhm.
to me, or for me, a man who wants to be with a trans woman wants to be with a trans woman. He can be
Mhm.
attracted to women in general, but he wants to be with a trans woman for a particular reason. And so we're not uh, battling you out for men. We're not, in competition, in my opinion. I often like to tell Black women, I admire you so much that I became you. So
Mhm.
I'm here to be in the fight with you. You know, um, a lot of people would say that in the hierarchy of the human race, the Black woman's, the Black woman's on the bottom of the pile. So why would
Mhm.
I make the choice to move myself to the bottom of the pile? And the reason I say I do make that choice is because I know I want to be strong enough with the being on this planet that supports everything else. And that's the Black.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
strongest person I've ever known in my life have always been Black women. That's physically, mentally, spiritually. And that's what I
Mhm.
want.
Well, that it's wonderful that you are a great example of and like I keep saying, an inspiration to us all because you've been there and you're still there and you're still educating and helping. And this is an amazing thing. And so hopefully somewhere down the line, the young people will watch this video 100 years from now and say, she really made sense. She's talking the way I feel, how I live my life. And this is what we want people to see, that we live everyday lives just like them. They just try to, like you say, sexualize it. And this is something that, yes, we have sex, but don't you have sex as well?
Yeah, I think that if television and media showed more aspects of people in general, and I hate to break things down upon racial lines, but I think that's the easiest way to explain it. You can turn on the television show or on the TV right now, and by chance, you'll just flipping channels, you'll come across depictions of Caucasian families on pretty much every channel. And then after
Hmm.
a while, when you get to certain stations, like UPN or whatnot, you might come across a Black family. But then again, very rarely do you come across Asian families. Do you come across Native American families? I don't think I've ever seen a depiction of a Native American family ever on a television show.
Hmm.
You know, and then you can get break it down, to just anything, Jewish families, so on and so forth. So I think that being a creative person such as myself and being able to travel and express myself through travel and taking pictures of things to express that, I wish that I could hopefully inspire uh, those who write and produce those shows to produce more
Hmm.
shows that involve people like me doing very ordinary things that everyone else does, because it's not extraordinary. I didn't do anything that moved mountains. I went online, I ordered a flight, I flew over to Hawaii to visit my son and stayed in his home, walked around his neighborhood, got to see mangoes on trees that were this big and avocados that weighed 2 pounds. And no one thought anything. I mean, everyone was, hi, how are you today, ma'am? Every Uber driver. And it's not about being respectful. I think they just called me what they saw. I often tell people,
Hmm.
sometimes people discover you're trans, they all of a sudden say, well, what do I call you, ma'am or sir? I'm like, well, what? Call me what you see, you know?
Hmm.
So I think that
That, go ahead.
if we're
I'm
able to
sorry.
if we're able to see more positive lifestyles, we'll understand. Quickly I'll say this. It reminds me of when the Cosby show came out and my Caucasian friends and some Black families were saying it was unrealistic, and I'm like, "But why was it unrealistic? It was realistic for me, coming from an upper middle class family whose family members, worked as nurses or doctors or lawyers or were in the military, you know. But yet, when they do a depiction of, say, a family being depicted on the movies Friday After Next, well, that's realistic. That wasn't realistic for
Mhm.
me. I didn't grow up in the hood or the ghetto or whatever kind of negative connotation people want to say. So if there's any producers that are ever watching this, hey, if you want to make a movie or a reality show about trans women being trans women, not involved in the glamour world, not involved in drag, but just day to day, everyday life, I'm available.
Mhm. It's funny. I love watching the show Red Fox, and he did an episode where he was having a toothache and he had to go to the dentist. And
Hmm.
he, the man that came out to fix his teeth was black. I mean, was white. And he was asking him all kinds of questions, this and that, and this and that. And he didn't want him working on his teeth. He says, I want somebody that's been in the business a long time. And in other words, he was trying to say that he wasn't qualified to work on his mouth. And he wanted the head of the surgery department to look at his mouth and everything. I'm sorry, the person was black. So they sent in a white assistant to overall access him. And then he says, well, I don't think that I'm qualified. After looking at the CT, said, I don't think I'm qualified to fix your tooth. I will call the head of surgery to do it. And in comes the same black man that came out the first time to look at his tooth. And he just sort of went, oh, how you doing, brother? It
I
was
think it's I
very
I think it
funny.
boils down to perception. I'm thankful that my parents taught me that we could be anything we wanted to be. And the one
Mhm,
thing I can remember my dad saying as I was a young child was never be the stereotype. You can be anything you
mhm,
want to be, but never be the stereotype. Never be what they want you to be or what they expect you to be. Always, go past their expectations, whoever they were, you know.
mhm.
And that's what I've always championed myself to be, more than your expectation.
Mhm. So, on that note, how was your vacation? How was it overall?
My vacation is always lovely. We did a lot of outdoor things. There were a few times we just stayed in the house and laid in bed and watched Netflix and just vacationed or just, commiserated together. My sister and I, it was our first trip there. If you've never been to Hawaii, go. It's a unique experience in and of itself. From the little things, just from the trees, the
Mhm,
flora and fauna that you see, they just don't exist anywhere else. Um, my sister was out on the patio one day or on the veranda on the balcony, and she's like, "Girl, come here, girl, come here, come here, come." And she was excited. And so I ran to see what she was. She goes, "Girl, look." And I said, "What?" She goes, "You don't see them parrots." I say, "Yeah, it's just parrots flying around here." I say, "Well, parrots are their natural birds, like how in Texas y'all have crows and in Phoenix we have pigeons. You know, have you noticed that you don't see any crows here?" She's like, "Oh, I didn't notice that." I said, "Because they're normal